5 tankers are on fire. 150 ships are sitting dead in the water, engines running, going absolutely nowhere. And as of this week, the world's most powerful marine insurance companies have not raised their rates or added a surcharge. They have canceled coverage entirely for every vessel attempting to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. What you are witnessing right now is the shutdown of the most critical waterway on Earth, and it was not accomplished by warships or naval mines. It was accomplished by 7 pieces of paperwork. This is about to hit your gas pump, your grocery bill, and your economy in ways most people will not see coming until it has already arrived. 5 vessels, 5 crews, 5 burning or damaged ships within a single week. These are not statistics on a spreadsheet. They are real ships carrying real cargo that the global economy depends on every single day. The first was a Panama-flagged tanker struck and set ablaze on February 28th, the opening day of hostilities, becoming the first vessel sunk in these waters since the tanker conflicts of the 1980s. The second was a Marshall Islands-flagged product tanker hit the following day, with 1 crew member confirmed dead, not wounded, dead. The third was a Gibraltar-flagged bunkering vessel struck off the UAE coast, its crew evacuated to safety. The fourth was a U.S.-flagged product tanker damaged by aerial impacts while docked at a Middle East port, killing a shipyard worker on the ground. The fifth was struck by 2 drones inside the strait itself and set ablaze. 5 ships, 2 people dead, 1 unmistakable message delivered in burning steel. Most people assume a waterway gets shut down by warships, naval mines, or a dramatic military confrontation played out on open water. What actually closed the Strait of Hormuz was something far quieter and far more powerful. It was paperwork. Within 72 hours of the first strike, 7 of the 12 clubs belonging to the International Group of Protection and Indemnity Clubs issued cancellation notices for all vessels attempting to transit the Gulf. These are not obscure institutions. They collectively cover third-party liabilities for approximately 90% of the entire global merchant fleet. Before February 28th, insuring a single $100 million tanker through the strait cost roughly $200,000 per voyage. Within 48 hours of the first drone strike, that figure had surged to $1 million per trip. Then, the policies disappeared entirely. No higher rates, no surcharges, no coverage at all. When insurance vanishes, ships do not move. It is that simple. Here is what a complete shipping collapse looks like in real numbers. On February 28th, the day hostilities began, satellite tracking recorded 22 supertanker transits through the Strait of Hormuz. Normal daily traffic, completely unremarkable. By March 1st, just 1 day later, that number had dropped to 4. By March 2nd, just 72 hours after the first strike, the count had reached 0. No tankers broadcasting identification signals through the world's most important energy corridor. Not a slowdown. Not a reduction. 0. A waterway that moves 20 million barrels of oil every single day had gone completely silent in 3 days, and the ships themselves had nowhere to go. At least 150 vessels, tankers, LNG carriers, and product carriers dropped anchor in open waters surrounding the strait, clustered off the coasts of Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the UAE. Waiting. Cargo sitting in their tanks. Crews on board. Engines running. Going absolutely nowhere. When 20 million barrels of daily oil supply simply stops moving, the price consequences are immediate, global, and brutal. Brent crude futures rose more than 13% within the first week alone. European natural gas, which depends heavily on liquefied natural gas shipped from Qatar through the strait, did something even more alarming. The week before hostilities began, European gas was trading at $30 per megawatt hour. By March 2nd, it had climbed to $46. By March 3rd, it had peaked above $60. From $30 to $60 in under 4 days, nearly double in less than a week. The benchmark freight rate for supertankers carrying 2 million barrels from the Middle East to Asia hit an all-time record, surging 94% in a single weekend. One senior analyst described it plainly as about as wrong as things could go at any single point of failure in global oil markets. And that was just the beginning. The consequences of a frozen strait do not stop at oil prices. They travel through the entire architecture of global trade in ways that most news coverage is not yet fully connecting. Iraq began shutting down production at one of its largest and most productive oil fields, not because it was bombed, not because any infrastructure was damaged, but because with 150 tankers anchored outside the strait and no new vessels willing to take on cargo, Iraq had simply run out of places to store the oil it was already producing. The shipping system that should have been moving that oil had frozen completely. Meanwhile, the world's largest shipping operators, companies that together carry a significant portion of all containerized goods flowing between Asia, the Middle East, and Europe, suspended Gulf transits entirely. Emergency surcharges of thousands of dollars per container were introduced overnight. Every product moving through the Gulf, electronics, food, medicine, clothing, was suddenly carrying thousands of dollars of additional cost before leaving the dock. To understand why this crisis is structurally different from anything the modern shipping industry has faced before, consider what happened during the Iran-Iraq War between 1980 and 1988. Approximately 540 vessels were attacked in the Persian Gulf over 8 years. Insurance rates rose roughly 300% at their peak, and yet shipping through the Strait of Hormuz never fully ceased. The reason is specific and critical. Lloyd's of London maintained coverage throughout the entire conflict, backed by government war risk facilities. The United States military launched a dedicated naval convoy escort program that physically shepherded tankers through the strait. Both of those conditions are now effectively absent. Today's insurance market entered this crisis structurally weaker than it was in 1986, already bleeding from 26 months of sustained Houthi attacks on Red Sea shipping. The Hormuz crisis did not hit a healthy system. It hit a system already running on its thinnest capital reserves in the modern era. The Strait of Hormuz is not the only waterway under threat right now, and that is what makes this crisis genuinely different from anything that came before it. The moment the first strikes landed, Houthi forces in Yemen announced they would immediately resume attacks on commercial shipping in the Red Sea. Their pause on vessel targeting, maintained during a ceasefire period following the June 2025 conflict, ended the instant hostilities began. The Bab al-Mandab Strait, the narrow southern entrance to the Red Sea connecting to the Suez Canal, instantly returned to the threat environment that defined the worst months of the 2024 crisis. Major shipping operators reversed earlier decisions to return routes through the Red Sea and rerouted services around the entire African continent via the Cape of Good Hope. Both of the world's most critical maritime corridors are now simultaneously under active threat for the first time in modern history. There is no clean detour left. When neither the Strait of Hormuz nor the Bab al-Mandab is passable, ships have only one remaining option. They go around the entire African continent via the Cape of Good Hope. That single rerouting decision adds 10 to 14 days to every voyage. It consumes significantly more fuel. It requires additional crew time and additional port costs at every step of the journey. And it means that whatever oil or cargo does eventually reach Europe or Asia arrives later and more expensive than before, assuming any tanker owner is willing to take on Gulf cargo in the first place. Goldman Sachs and Barclays have both flagged to institutional clients the serious risk of sustained elevated oil prices if strait restrictions extend over a longer period. UBS had already told clients before hostilities began that a material disruption could push Brent crude above $120 per barrel. With Brent already up 13% in under a week and tanker traffic at zero, that figure no longer represents an extreme scenario. Here is the strategic reality that the shipping data and insurance filings reveal when read together carefully. Iran did not need to mine the strait. It did not need to deploy its full naval force. It did not need to sustain 540 ship attacks over 8 years the way the 1980s tanker war unfolded. Iran needed to hit 5 ships, declare the strait closed on state media, and wait. The insurance market did everything else. The geometry of this is precise and devastating. Iranian drones cost tens of thousands of dollars each. The tankers they struck are worth hundreds of millions. Before the first strike, insuring one of those tankers cost $200,000 per voyage. After the strikes, that figure hit $1 million and then disappeared entirely. Ships stopped moving. 20 million barrels per day stopped flowing. Oil prices surged 13% in 5 days. Iran spent the cost of a handful of drones to produce an energy crisis being compared to the 1970s oil embargo. The Strait of Hormuz trap was not a surprise. Iran had threatened to close it for years. Analysts wrote detailed scenarios about it. War games modeled it repeatedly. The United States built an enormous military infrastructure across the Gulf region precisely to prevent it from ever happening. And then it happened anyway. Not with mines, not with warships, not with the dramatic naval confrontation that every war planner had spent decades preparing to counter. It happened with 5 drones, a state media broadcast, and 7 insurance companies filing cancellation paperwork. That is what a permanent strategic trap looks like when it finally closes. Iraq is shutting down oil fields because it has nowhere to store production. 150 ships sit anchored in open water going nowhere. European natural gas nearly doubled in 4 days, supertanker rates hit an all-time record, and the world's largest marine insurers have formally withdrawn coverage for 9 out of every 10 ships on the planet. This is not a story about a distant war between distant countries. This is a story about the most important 21 miles of water on Earth and what happens to the global economy when those 21 miles go silent. 5 tankers hit, 2 people confirmed dead. 150 ships anchored in open water with nowhere to go. The world's largest marine insurers have canceled war risk coverage effective today. Tanker traffic through the strait has collapsed from 22 transits per day to effectively 0 in 72 hours. Brent crude is up 13% in a week. European natural gas nearly doubled in 4 days. Supertanker freight rates hit an all-time record. Iraq is shutting down one of its biggest oil fields because the shipping system that should move its oil has completely frozen. The IRC has delivered the same message to every ship captain on Earth. The strait is closed, and the insurance market has agreed.